Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on 7 Key Steps to Financial Planning for Special Needs Families with Patrick MacGrath. This is an inclusive 90-minute webinar on creating comprehensive financial plans for your family. During this webinar, we will challenge the notion that special needs planning solely centers around governmental support, focus on true planning that revolves around the family, and help families access exceptional financial planning experts with experience in special needs arena. Before we begin, a few notes about participation. My name is Andrea Lucy, and I'm the Membership and Chapter Coordinator at PWSA USA. Your audio was muted when you joined the call. Questions can be submitted via the question box on your screen. We should have ample time for questions after the presentation. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenter today. Patrick is the CEO of Private Wealth Management Group, a comprehensive wealth planning firm that also specializes in special needs planning for families with a disability. Patrick currently holds many financial planning designations and the unique Chartered Special Needs Consultant designation. As a member of the Academy of Special Needs Planners, the Estate Planning Council of Northeast Wisconsin, and as a baseball coach for the Miracle League of Green Bay, Patrick is an active member of the Wisconsin community. Welcome, Patrick. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Hello, everybody. This is Patrick, and I'm actually going to do something a little different. I am going to share my webcam for a few moments and turn you on here. So that you can see me for a moment or two before we get going. Hello, camera. All right, this is good. Everything works on the technical side when we're wanting to do this, but right now it's not bringing you guys up. So let's try this one more time, shall we? People can see. So it said my screen can be seen, but I can't see you. Truthfully, I don't know if you guys can see me or not. Because it's not showing.
It looks like your webinar is not sharing right now for some reason. It was working on the walkthrough, but it looks like it doesn't want to do it right now.
You know what? I'm going to shut my webcam off and let's see. Why is it not wanting to show screen? I mean, let's start this again. Can you guys hear me? Can you see the screen, Andrea?
We can hear you and we can see the screen. We just can't see your webinar or your webcam.
My webcam. All right. Well, folks, I apologize for you guys not being able to see me because I wanted to share this first few moments of why I do what I do. And first of all, I want to thank Andrea for putting this program together. It's tremendously important for everybody, and especially in this environment with COVID and social unrest and all of these unprecedented times. Things are changing so rapidly, so fast. And I wanted to share with you this presentation that I put on back in November, back at the national conference with a few additional tweaks. But I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea as to why financial planning, and more specifically, why financial planning for families with special needs. And it all comes down to my sister Heather, who is now 43 years old. Back in the day when she was born, there was no financial planning for families with special needs kids. And so I watched my family go through lots of trials and tribulations on how are we going to do this type of planning? What works, what doesn't work, what guidance did my parents get, what guidance did they not get? So many various things that came on. But I can vividly remember two things, and if you'll bear with me for a moment, Heather was born with a soft version of cerebral palsy. We were in Chicago, and she was 16 years of age, and we were about 5 minutes from leaving my sister's apartment downtown Chicago to go see Andrew Lloyd Webber's presentation of Animals Beyond It. And we're all getting ready to go and things like that, and Heather's sitting in a chair, and she takes a drink of Coke. I vividly remember this. All of a sudden, her eyes close, and soda starts rolling out of her cheek, and she starts falling out of her chair. That was Heather's first epileptic seizure. She's probably had a million since then. I had never been so scared for somebody in my entire life as I was at that moment. And that hit me like a freight train. I'm the older brother. In addition to Heather, I have another sister, Rebecca. So I have no idea what to do. Thankfully, my mom had been in the healthcare field for 30, 35 years, so she knew what was going on. But I don't remember anything after the fact that Heather had that seizure. It was the first one. And oh my gosh, scared me like crazy. Fast forward to the summer of 2005. So I was 32, Heather was about 27. And we are at my wedding rehearsal dinner. And so there's about 100 people, and we're in Oregon. And Heather comes up to me and Kirsten towards the end of the reception, and in front of maybe a dozen people, tells me that it's no longer my responsibility to take care of her. And I apologize, you might be able to hear it in my voice, but there's no way in hell I'm not taking care of her. And it was at that point in my financial planning career that the genesis began. That's something like what you're looking at with regards to promise. 7 steps here began to take shape, because if families like mine didn't have the guidance, who was ever going to give it to them? You know, yes, you can get financial guidance from a financial advisor, but they know nothing about special needs planning. And that became the mission for what we're wanting to accomplish and what we're wanting to do. Okay, so I wanted to share that with you so you knew where I was coming from, why this is so important for me, because even still, the planning for my family continues. Okay, so here we go. We're going to jump into why promise and what makes this such a big deal. So there's Heather, along with myself and my 3 kids several years ago in Carlsbad, California. So the question becomes, and for those of you who've already seen this presentation, hopefully it'll be a nice reminder of some things to think about as you go on. What does 20% mean in the special needs world? Cue the Jeopardy music. Ding, ding, ding. 20% is the number of individuals in this country who have a disability. You do the simple math, there's ballpark 300 million people. We have roughly 60 million people who have a disability. What an ungodly large number. You know, how do we even begin to help some of these folks? We don't see families like yours and mine in investment-related commercials. We don't see them in estate planning commercials. The general public as a whole tends to not see us. But if 1 in 5 people has a disability, we have to be a champion of cause here. We have to find a way to serve. We have to find a way to give back. And that's what I plan to want to do. So this is a big deal for this many people. And I think the last time I had learned there's maybe 15,000 individuals with Prader-Willi. It's still a tremendously large number. So there's lots of people who need to go. Okay. So challenge factors, what can they be? Chess. I'm not a very good chess player, but there are so many moving parts to not only the traditional wealth planning, but the special needs wealth planning. It's so easy to just quit and give up. Hence the idea for this little 7-step program. Doesn't matter where you start, just find a place to get started. And, you know, as we move on, here's my note. 60 million people have a disability. The increasing demand for services, the costs keep going up. I just read a New York Times article about the decreasing number of support service firms that have or will go out of business due to COVID, and that number is 20% nationwide. So we already have a hard enough time figuring out what we're going to do with our children, or in my case, my sister who was in Florida with my parents. What kind of additional support services are there for them to use or get access to? But if the money starts drying up, where does that onus fall? It falls on the parents. It falls on the brothers and sisters to make sure that whatever plan we choose has to be accurate. It's got to be right, because one little misstep in all of this, and we know it can be really difficult to unwind. Okay, so those are the challenges. Moms and dads out there, brothers and sisters, if you're the ones chartered with making sure things are going on, recognize you're not alone in any step of this process. There's people out there that can help, but there's not a lot of us. And so nobody asked for this. The kids, my sister, they didn't ask for this ability, but it's becoming on us to make sure we're getting things right moving forward for them. All right. So one of the first steps here is research your options. And this is a particular piece that puts into a timeline snapshot of what you can expect, not only from the traditional wealth planning world, but also for the special needs world. Okay. So I could spend an entire hour on this particular page, but we certainly don't have the time. But a few key points. And you know what? Take a picture of this, okay? It will help as you begin to think about where I am in the life cycle here. Where do I need to be? What's coming up? What questions do I need to start asking? And where do I go to find out the answers? Okay. For example, in my particular case, my parents are in their 70s, Heather's in her 40s. So we're kind of at the end of my parents' planning timeline, but maybe right in the middle of where Heather might be. All right. Birth to 3, the early stages. This is the easiest place to kind of get started, in that IEPs come along, you start thinking about saving for your future, you start thinking about not only am I saving for my future, but the future of my children, and maybe you've got more than one child. We're a family of 3 kids, I'm the oldest. Rebecca, my sister's in California, and Heather's in Florida with my parents. So you start moving through some of these various pieces, okay? One quick note in the transitioning point, the transition planning, ages 3 through 17. Should you come across a challenge where the school system you're in does not provide the appropriate education for them, the sad part is you have to sue them. And maybe there's some folks who are on this call right now who had to go that route. I have clients in California where that's exactly what they had to do. Nobody likes to do that, but the district is entitled to provide a fair and public education. Okay. If their current systems do not allow that, they have to come to the table with the money for your child to go to an education facility that will give them the services that they need. Okay. So keep that in mind. It's not one of those fun things anybody likes to do, but once you go through the process, it's certainly rewarding on the back end. Okay. Question often comes up. I've got SSI and Medicaid at roughly age 18. Back up roughly to age 16. That's when you start beginning to think about the transition plan. Okay. You can't do it till you're 18, but you kind of want to have all your ducks in a row before you get there. All right. For instance, Prader-Willi children, if and when SSI gets approved, Medicaid already steps in at the same time. Okay, you're automatically eligible. We often get the question, why don't I apply for SSI earlier? Because typically up to age 18, the assets of the parents are also the assets of the kids. Okay, 18, that child becomes an adult. He or she has no assets to their own name, and they can apply for SSI. One quick caveat with regards to some of the questioning, okay? They'll ask something like, can your son or daughter actually prepare their own food? And in my sister's case, yeah, she can prepare her own food. But what are they really asking? They're really asking, can Heather, and if some of you remember this from the presentation before, can Heather actually come up with a meal plan, write down the ingredients, find the money, find a bus, get on the appropriate bus, know the appropriate route, know when to get off at the store, buy the groceries, pay the appropriate fee for the groceries, get out of there, get back on the bus, safely get home, cook the food, eat the food, clean the dishes, and be done. Yes, that sounds ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. But that's why 65% of first-time applicants for SSI get denied, okay? Because we always tend to overthink what our children can do with regards to their abilities. All right. So keep that in mind as you go. As you move down the timeline, you know, Social Security comes in age 65. CDB is Child Disability Benefit. My sister Heather, who had been receiving SSI all along until my dad retired, she then was able to transfer onto his Social Security record and start to receive a child disability benefit. Okay, so it's another way just to keep moving forward with income to the child. Now, where that money gets funded from and where and how it gets paid, either with taxes or through Medicare, a different story for a different time. Just recognize that your child, should they get a little bit older, and start to receive child disability benefits, or DAC, which is disabled adult child. You can get that as well. All right. So this is a really good starting place where find out where you are in these life plans. Okay. Not just from where your child is or your adult child, or in my case, my sister being in her 40s, but find out where you are in regards to your own financial planning timeline. Okay. Because every little piece has a ramification. All right. So I'm going to move forward in the interest of time, and I'm going to go to O for open the door. This is the most emotional part because let's say that I had elected Andrea Lucy, our wonderful host, to be Heather's guardian and keeper of the keys. Who should Andrea know? What does she need to know about Heather, so that if my parents are gone and I'm gone and my sister Rebecca's gone, the rest of Heather's extended family, if we're all gone and Andrea is the one taking care of Heather. I call her H, so if I jump in here and call her H from time to time, please forgive me. But who and what does that individual need to know with regards to Heather? Okay, so the upper left-hand corner is my buddy Lance. Lance and his wife have a daughter, Bryn, who's got Prader-Willi. Okay, and it's a challenge. She tells me about it all the time. But what I want you to take a look at is the picture with Heather and my old dog Harley. Okay, a little insight into Heather. Heather loves her captain's hat. She does not like t-shirts. She likes button-down sports shirts like Tampa Bay Buccaneers is where she's at now. She's not wearing her favorite cowboy boots, but she's an amazing individual with animals. So if we're going to do person-centered planning, in the past, it just used to be the parents saying, hey, this is what I want for my child. I want them to go to this school. I want them to live in this place. These are their friends. These are the things that they like. And then you set it and forget it. There's been a massive transition out of that rather archaic way of thinking. It's become much more inclusive with regards to Heather in terms of what does she really like? What does she really want to do? And truthfully, parents, my parents included, have a hard time letting go of the old school ideas that they know what's best. Yes, they may think they know what's best, but truly, what does that individual want for themselves? Okay, so we get into this letter of intent, which is also called a letter of memorandum or memorandum of intent, whatever it might be. Take a quick little picture of that because it gives you some ballpark ideas as to things to start to write down. Okay. There's many, many more examples of this stuff that you're going to want, but think of it this way. This is not by any stretch a legal document, okay? Will not hold up in court. It's not part of a special needs trust, but a lot of the new financial regulations and legal regulations in the special needs planning world from an estate planning side, the attorneys are starting to take a look at this as being the meat and potatoes of what used to be a 50-page special needs trust, all right? So we're going to a trust that's only 2 or 3 pages long, but yet then we have this nice long magazine of information, all right? So every one of our kids is unique. We know that. We have insight and guidance that nobody else is going to get. But parents, it's important for you guys to realize that we're going to have to answer the worst question we can ever think of. And that is, what's our biggest fear? If something happens to mom and dad collectively, what's the biggest fear? In my particular case, obviously my sister Rebecca and I can step in to take care of Heather. But if you're a young family where you've got young kids who are 2 and 3 and something happens to mom and dad, who steps in then? Okay, so vitally important. So, a couple of quick things. If I was going to ask Andrea to take care of my sister, what does she want to know? And this is a fun part of the presentation, and so it's tough talking to a computer screen, so bear with me, please, because I usually get some laughs when we do this live and whatnot. But I've shared with you the captain's hat. She loves cowboy boots, but she wasn't wearing them in that one particular picture, right? Heather loves Lipton hot tea, okay? Not the decaf kind. You give her the decaf kind, she has a fit. 3 sugars, not 2, okay? And if it's not that way, every single time, it's meltdown city, all right? If you were going to be taking care of Heather, one other thing you might want to know is her stomach has a name, and the name is Joe, okay? If you were in charge of taking care of Heather, and she's in her room doing something, and all of a sudden you hear her yell out, "You stop that, Joe," you might think somebody else is coming into the house, right? No, it's Joe, her stomach, farting, okay? Yes, I did say farting. That's what's happening, okay? No need to be alarmed. But that might be something you want to know if you were going to be in charge of taking care of Heather, okay? She has all of these little idiosyncrasies, just like all of our kids do, all right? Or brothers and sisters, whoever they might be. Every one of them is so unique in so many different ways, okay? So here's the other big challenge. I live in Wisconsin. My sister's in California. My parents are in Florida. Between Heather's medication, especially for epilepsy, she can go about 12 hours without any meds. If something happens to my parents, the likelihood of myself or my sister Rebecca getting to her in 12 hours time, it's doable if I can get on a quick flight out of Chicago or Milwaukee, but not likely, okay? The other part happens is, what if I get down there and I don't know where the meds are? And guess what? Or I don't know how much she's supposed to take. My mom has a little red book in the library, and we were joking about it today. And I said, if I didn't know where the little red book was, I would be totally stuck having to have Heather tell me where the stuff is. Oh, what if your child can't tell you? Or what if they can't tell a caregiver or somebody who's going to be responsible for them? All right. So I implore you to do something as simple as start a Google document and put it on Google Drive and share it with those individuals who are going to be responsible for your loved one. Whether it's the guardian or the trustee on my list here, the caregiver, the power of attorney, whomever it might be. Maybe it's a neighbor next door who loves your child, who can be that intermediary caregiver until the real caregiver gets to town, wherever that might be, okay? This is such a huge piece, because if COVID taught us nothing, is that we're completely unprepared. My parents at some level are still unprepared, and they're in their 70s. And so I share with you my own personal experience with my family as it relates to doing this kind of planning, okay? This is also a wine and chocolate and Kleenex Friday night once a month, okay? You'll have fun writing things down about your family, but you got to take it from a perspective of, I'm writing this for somebody else. I can't stress enough how important this particular piece is. Okay. And I think you'll find as your story grows, the more it'll change and the easier it will be to accomplish. Okay. So please think about this. It's vitally important. All right. So managing a legacy. This is the financial planning part of the presentation, and I'm certainly not going to bog you down with all the ins and outs of that. But at the same time, it's kind of important, because not only is it, what's my biggest fear if something happens to me, but how the hell am I going to pay for all this stuff? That not only do I want to have my own retirement, which my parents truly have never had, and they're in their early 70s, well, how do I also ensure that Heather is taken care of and has resources above and beyond the normal SSI of $780 a month or the disabled adult child benefit that she's getting, how do we plan to have other resources available for her? Okay, so the picture you're looking at is, my folks are back there, and my dad in the blue and my mom in the red, and then I'm to the right. That's why I was hoping you guys could see me earlier so you could put a face to the voice. But if you're looking at the photo, that's my family on the left-hand side, and my sister and her husband Jason are on the right-hand side. Okay, and then there's Heather third from the right. All right, our family legacy is, how do we take care of Heather if and when mom and dad pass away? And you know what? This is a game nobody gets out of alive, right? So it's going to happen. My sister and I, we spend a lot of time talking to parents about how do we get them to start moving forward, and they struggle with this idea. Okay, Heather's not ready to leave the house yet, but we have to be prepared for that probably within the next 5 years. Okay, probably within the next 5 years. So a legacy isn't just one person saying I'm doing this. In our particular case, it's a multitude of individuals saying, okay, you know what? We have to take care of this individual as we go. So this is our transition here, okay? So what did COVID do to everybody's financial accounts from March through May? They wiped them out, right? We had the fastest 35 to 40% drop we've ever had. Conversely, we then had the fastest 35 or 40% recovery to the stock market, right? History isn't a guarantee, but it sure leaves some clues, okay? We've been through some chaos before. We've had major world wars. We've had the Great Depression back in the 20s, the Korean War, stagflation back in the early 70s. Interest rates were 17%. I remember because my parents told me when they bought their first house, right? The stock market historically, going back all the way back from 1900 up to 2020, has always moved itself up and to the right, okay? So it's from a 50,000 foot view, we know which direction we're headed. Yes, we're gonna have storm clouds along the way, but keep in mind, just, Dory, the movie, right? Or Finding Nemo, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. It applies to this right now, all right? So even though we've had tremendous difficulties from time to time, not just in our country, but in other countries around the world, we've always found a way to recover, and we will on this one too, okay? This particular slide, I'll be happy to send to anybody if you want. You know what? Take a picture of it too. JP Morgan puts out a lot of really good information. This drills it down a little bit. That last one, we were looking at a 50,000 foot view. Let's get a little bit closer in terms of what really happens intra-year, okay? We got all been out of shape in the beginning part of this year with the biggest drop, and now we've come back, okay? You can look at any one of these years and see, just by looking at the picture, how many lines above 0% there are that are positive, and there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years since 1980 where the stock market had dropped significantly at some point during the course of the year, okay? So why don't we pick, how about 1980? It's the first year there, right? At one point during the year in 1980, we were down 17%. All right, so this is the S&P 500. I'd be willing to bet most of you have an investment in the S&P 500 in any of your investment accounts, okay? But at one point during the year, we were down 17%. We finished the year up 26%, okay? Massive fluctuations happen inside of the investment accounts or the investments that you're invested in on an annual basis, okay? Go to, let's pick another one where we had a big drop that, now let's go to, well, we know the early 2000 tech boom, right? We were down 17% at one point, we rallied up to -10. All right, that's not great, but we did come off the bottom a little bit. The next year, at one point, we were down 30. We came up a little bit, down 34. Everybody lost their shorts who were investing back at that time, all right? But go to, let's say, 2009, right after 2008, obviously. Hello, Patrick, that makes sense, right? But I remember exactly where I was when everything started to break out at that time, all right? At one point during 2009, we were down 28%, but we finished the year up 23. Point being here, folks, stay invested, do some reallocation. Maybe you come out of some of the risky assets you have in your portfolios, but don't go to cash, okay? In today's day and age, you can see all the way out to the 2020, at one point we were down 34%. This is actually the end of June. So we've come back up to almost exactly where we started year to date, all right? Cash is not paying anybody anything. CDs and the bank accounts, they used to be great for my parents' generation when you could get 6 or 7% there. Now you're lucky if you get 0.5% on 100 grand, okay? So try not to emotionally overreact. And this particular chart might be one of the most important ones in this entire thing, okay? If you've got a good plan going forward, if you've got a good strategy, if you think you're on track, stay there, okay? This is a nice piece to always keep in mind. And the reality is too, you know, Harvard has about $30 billion in an endowment, right? They don't worry about all these big ups and these big downs, okay? They have their investment policy statement that says, you know what, I'm going to be happy with 5, 6, 7% per year. I'm not chasing the big guys, but I'm not going to strike out too much either. They've taken all of the emotion out of it. They've built a logical, mathematical plan that says this is going to be the way we're going to invest, and we'll hire the best money managers we can find to fit the bill, okay? So this is a real important piece to give you a little bit of peace of mind that, hey, you know what? Just because we're down doesn't mean we're going to stay down, and we have some data to back that up, all right? All right, so I'm going to push forward here a little bit. I would argue that in normal conversation with people not affiliated with the financial planning world, if you were to ask them, hey, what's your tolerance for risk? 95 out of 100 are thinking, what, you mean in the stock market? You think in, you know, what's going on with bonds, you know, whatever it might be. I would challenge you to think that there are other risks that have to be considered when determining whether or not your financial plan is going to be successful. And what tools are you using to help determine, am I going to be successful? If you look at a mutual fund that says on average I'm going to get 5%, what it doesn't tell you is 1 year you're up 5%, the next year you're down 5%, and then back up 10%. Well, then you're averaging out, okay? People get caught up on that average, but I would begin to think and challenge you to think, let's go a little bit deeper into some of these other areas of risk planning that have to be addressed in concert with investment portfolios, okay? Longevity risk. People are living longer, right? For my parents, my dad's parents, my grandma and grandpa, both passed away in their early 70s. In fact, my dad now at 74 is older than both of his parents when they passed away. My mom's mom died 2 years ago at 96. So if you're planning for a 30-year retirement, the longevity risk can be such a large piece of the pie, especially if you don't know what's going to happen. And obviously, nobody knows what's going to happen, okay? But that transition between, you know, my dad truthfully thinks he's on borrowed time right now, which makes some of the planning a little bit harder because my mom's like, you know what, I'm going to outlive you by 20 years, so get your ass off the couch over there and let's do some of this stuff, all right? So this is big. Budgeting risk, how and what and where you spend the money. Vitally huge. Again, you know, my dad retired at 60 from JCPenney's and went and bought an RV. Was it his dream? It was. So I can't knock him for that. But I can get on him a little bit for some of the financial choices he made with regards to pulling that off because he lost his shorts. Okay. If anybody owns an RV, maybe they've been down that road before. Okay. Health risk. Are you generally pretty healthy or not? We tend to think we are, but everybody gets older. And family health, genealogy, all of that comes in. Heck, on every life insurance application you ever fill out, has a member of your family had cancer or any one of these other issues? Because they want to know. Okay, so that's important. Two other quick things here. Rising cost risk. That's inflation. Okay, if inflation's rising at 3%, things will triple in roughly 30 or 40 years in terms of cost. So if you've got a young kid now who's 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, by the time, if they're lucky enough to get to that middle age, things that are inexpensive now are going to cost a whole lot more later. Everybody's seen that. Okay. Inflation is a big deal. When you're doing your planning, your investment planning, make sure those calculations are also involved in what's it going to look like for inflation. All right. Long-term care. There used to be 1 million players in the long-term care world. Now there's only a few. In that everybody, I guarantee on this call, has a story where they know somebody who's in some form of a facility where the pricing is outrageous. All right. I live in Wisconsin, not the most affluent of states, right? But in the town where my office and company is, it's anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 a year. I'm sorry, a month at the moment for a semi-private room. That's not 24/7. Okay. I'm certain other people in various parts of the country here, please think about this, because this is the single largest expense outside of a home once a couple reaches age 65. Okay. You'll spend on average about 300 grand. You think, well, geez, Patrick, that's a lot of money. Well, yeah, it's a lot of money. But if you're planning for a 30-year retirement, that's only 10 grand a year for 30 years for both of you. Yeah. You stub your toe and you go into the emergency room, it's 5 grand. Okay. It's easy for a lot of this money to be spent. All right. So that's why it's important that parents, your foundation with regards to your planning has to come first. Because if you build a house that has no structure for your kids, and especially one with a disability, that will come down. And I know, because I've talked to many of you at the conferences and others around, the next 5 minutes is the most important thing. I get that. But we've got to take a step back and say, I need to build a foundation. I need to start thinking about ensuring that my financial future is going to be strong, because who doesn't want a little bit of retirement too? Okay, everybody does. But if we don't do that particular piece, and you don't start putting money away or protecting yourself or whatnot, that's a house of cards that can only end in some real trouble for the loved ones. Okay, so please begin to think about that. That these risks right here are just as important as the portfolio risks that you've got inside your investment accounts. Okay, so I'm going to take a drink of water here real quick while we move on. Ooh, able accounts. Everybody's going to like this one. If you're taking notes, put a big star by this, because first thing I want you to do, I want you to draw a little circle on the left and put $2,000 in that circle, right? $2,000 is the IRS mandated limit for what an individual can have. All right. So in my sister's account in Florida, she can only have $2,000. All right. There's other things she can have. I'll get to that in a minute. But as far as cash money goes, $2 grand, little circle on the left-hand side. Far right side of your piece of paper, do a much bigger circle and write third-party special needs trust. You can have an unlimited amount of money in there. Okay. Forever, there was this massive gap in between those two worlds. Let's say 2,000 and 2 million with nothing in between. Right? Then the ABLE Act came. And ABLE, for those who don't know, means achieving a better life experience. Right? These are the rock star of the quote financial planning unquote world for special needs. All right. You still need a third-party special needs trust on the backside, but this is where I would start to think that you're going to put money away for your kids. Or if grandparents want to give money instead of gifts on a birthday or Christmas, start funding an ABLE account, okay? And get your cameras ready, because this is a picture you're going to want, all right? Took a long time. There are still some maneuverability issues, with some other states, but roughly 43 out of the 50 states have a plan, all right? Wisconsin does not have a plan where I live. Instead of going through all of the challenges of creating a 529-based platform, which is what an able account is, and the 529, for those of you who may have young kids, is an education funding tool you can put money in that the kids can use for college, okay? I have 3 of those established for my 3 kids, all right? But this is huge, all right? So there's 43 plans. Now, as I said, Wisconsin will allow a potential state tax credit for any account that is established somewhere else, all right? So let's say Heather was 23 years old. And there are some age restrictions here, but for the purposes of this call, 99% of the individuals who have people on this call under the age of 26 are going to automatically qualify, okay? A couple big numbers to keep in mind. $15,000 is the annual contribution limit, all right? You can't go 15,000 in one. You can't say, oh, I want to put in a little bit more. It's not. You have to stick to the 15,000, all right? These are super, super, super easy to set up. You don't need a financial advisor like me to do it, okay? You can go online to the, I think it's Able, you know what, I'll get you that email and send it to you guys after. You could just Google, set up an Able account, all right? And there are 43 states. Some of them allow dollars from out of state residents. Some of them do not, okay? So for instance, Ohio, the state of Ohio, has the nation's first account. It's called the stable account, all right? Minimum contribution is $50 a month, I think, or you can fund it with larger numbers. Who can fund it? I could fund $1 into every individual's Able account, all right? Moms, dads, brothers, sisters, things of that nature, friends. The individual, if your son or daughter can work, can actually take his or her earnings and put into this, okay? So for those on the call who have kids who work and they're thinking about saving some money, and you have this tool. So the 15,000 is the annual contribution limit. However, just recently, they have now allowed kind of a ticket to work program where an individual can put $12,000 of their own money inside. 12,000 is a ballpark. It's like 12,140. I've seen 12,150 in some states. The idea here is theoretically you could put $27,000 a year into this. Beautiful tool because it's so much easier to get money out than what used to be a really strict third-party special needs trust, okay? Here's a big caveat though, $100,000, write that down. If the Able account goes above 100 grand, 2 things happen, all right? The first is you will still continue to receive your SSI payment of $783, or if you, let's say, live in Wisconsin right now, they have a supplement to that is almost another $100, all right? Some states have supplements, some do not, all right? But the point being, if you get to 100 grand, you will not get to, maybe I'm gonna step on myself here. You will not get to keep your SSI, all right? What you do get to keep is Medicaid, all right? Medicaid is the big key, obviously. That pays for all sorts of health-related things. So that's important, all right? So the 100 grand is a big deal in terms of, if you get close to the $100,000 limit, we start advocating you get anywhere between 85 and 90, start spending some of that money, okay? It's huge. You can't mess that up, all right? One other big piece, there is potential Medicare payback based on the particular state and the resources that that state provided for your son or daughter, okay? So this is a great tool, spend some time here, okay? All right, I want to kind of hustle up here a little bit. So that's managing a legacy, all right? So the financial planning piece is huge, moms and dads, all right? This is a fun part of the presentation because I have my friend Prince, Heath Ledger, Honest Abe, and Aretha. And in a live show, we talk about what do these guys all have in common, other than that they're famous, right? Okay. Yes, they're all famous. They also all died without a will. What makes Aretha special? And I love her because she's from my hometown of Detroit. Aretha died without a will at age 86. She had an estimated net worth of $80 million. She has 4 children, 4 boys. One of them is an adult with special needs. She had no estate plan for them or for him. Okay, so what do we have now? We have a niece of hers who lives in Ohio who is kind of the trustee, trying to gather her arms around a very large probatable asset. And everything with probate becomes public. Okay, so for those individuals who have sizable wealth or family issues where you don't want people knowing what's going on, you've got to take care of the legal stuff. These guys obviously all had needs. They all had teams of professionals helping them, whether it's make money, market, get some music out for Aretha, but nobody pulled her to the side and said, you've got to do this. Otherwise, some challenges are going to happen, especially if you don't plan for your son. Now, okay, you're saying, Patrick, you may get $20 million and may not need any of that money. Well, if he's already on some kind of government support, they're going to force him to spend that down. Okay. And I'm going to take a quick step back and go back to that timeline I had you take a picture of. When your son or daughter gets to age 18 and you're thinking, you know what, you've got more than enough money, you don't need the 783, that might be true. It's not the money you're after. It's your golden ticket waiver, okay, your Medicaid waiver that allows you to get access to job coaching or workshops or some post-secondary programs, residential placement lists, depending upon where your kids are going to live. You don't have that ticket, you don't get in. I can't stress that enough. If you don't have that ticket, you can't get into those programs. Well, what if I write $1 million check? They'll just say, thank you very much. It's not worth the ink with the papers on. Okay. So you need to go through that process. All right. So Aretha and Prince and those guys, they made a bunch of money. They did all the right things from that perspective. They forgot to fulfill the back end of what they needed to do. Okay. So every one of us, myself included, my parents included, hell, it just took them, they were in the early 70s before they actually redid their will and got a trust established because they were making some poor choices with regards to their assets and what was going to happen to them. Please don't be like my folks, okay? Love them to death, but they've made a lot of wrong choices. But things like a will, a durable power of attorney, advanced medical directive. My wife is an urgent care nurse practitioner. We have all of this stuff that's easy to do. And a lot of the stuff you can do online if you don't have a lot of money, okay? You can find those resources, all right? But please start thinking about the foundation of your house. Having the legal plan in place is extremely huge, okay? One quick thing too about your child, son or daughter turning 18, guess what you don't get access to anymore? Their doctor's records, okay? So that gets into that guardianship issue or conservatorship issue. Please start spending some time thinking about how that's going to be handled, okay? Vitally, vitally important. This next one is about special needs trusts, and I'm gonna, for sake of time, say I'm not gonna worry about the first party special needs trust up top, okay? It's the third party special needs trust on the bottom that, for all intents and purposes of this conversation, is the most important, all right? This is that third large bucket on that piece of paper I had you write down, okay? Where it can hold all kinds of things. Investments, IRAs, yes, they can go inside there. But you've got to be very careful with regards to the language, because what happens with most IRAs is at some point, people have required minimum distributions. And Uncle Sam just changed a lot of the regulations with regards to beneficiaries and who and what can have the money and how long it takes for the money to come out of the account, okay? The third-party special needs trusts can hold these assets. They can hold the real estate, the retirement plans, you know, crazy things like if you've got, collection of antique cars, that are worth dollars or whatnot. You can put a lot of things inside the third-party special needs trust. But here's a quick piece of advice. Not every estate planning attorney is a special needs planning attorney or a disability attorney. You want to find somebody who's actually had some success arguing cases against the Social Security Administration, because what you have, and I've seen it and been a part of it, is you have kids right out of college looking for a job, go to work for the Social Security Administration or one of the local offices. They're making $15 an hour, and they don't have a clue as to what all the rules and regulations are. The guy or gal running that particular district might, but those individuals who are typically the first ones you get hold of do not. Okay, so that becomes beholden on you to find an attorney who's got experience in going after some of these folks. Okay, because sadly the SSA, Social Security Administration, is the one who governs all the distributions from the third-party special needs trust. All right, so vitally important to think about this. Now, who can put money into a third-party special needs trust? As I said earlier about the ABLE account, I can put money into your third-party special needs trust. It doesn't matter. Okay. So this could be a small amount. It can be a very large amount. All right. So cool thing is you have to have a remainder beneficiary. So in my particular case, for my parents have a third-party special needs trust established. Okay. They have the retirement assets in there. The assets are designed to go to Heather. I don't want them. My sister Rebecca doesn't want them. But should Heather pass away before myself or Rebecca, then those assets would flow to us should something happen to her. Okay, so there is a remainder beneficiary. That's really good. I did not put third-party pooled trusts on here. Completely different animal. We can talk about that some other time if needed. But the third party is the big piece. The most important part of the third-party special needs trust: no Medicare payback. Okay, you don't have to give anything back to Uncle Sam if you have the third-party special needs trust. All right, huge, huge planning point. All right, seeking support. So now we're on the S part, and I know I'm giving you a lot. Thank you for bearing with me. Hopefully you're finding some guidance in all of this stuff, okay? Because it's hard to find this information. It's taken me years to accumulate some of this knowledge, and I live to want to give it back so that you don't have to go through all of the challenges that I did, okay? Obviously, there are some things here. The Miracle League of Green Bay, the Reins of Hope was a huge support system for my sister Heather, which is equine therapy. Our firm is a member of the Academy of Special Needs Planners. Obviously, Prader-Willi is right there to help you. I know lots of those individuals in that firm. Fantastic, fantastic people from top to bottom. The reason I put this in here, seeking support, and the best example I can give you is my wife is the urgent care nurse practitioner. She used to be a med-surg oncology nurse, if anybody's familiar with that. It's kind of a really challenging, tough facility floor. And she would have to come home and just vent because she saw everything. She saw death, she saw fights, she saw parents or kids of parents fighting because they want to keep the parent alive. You've got doctors wanting to keep patients alive, and all of this stuff. Find somebody to talk to, okay? Find somebody that you can vent with. Ladies are so much better than guys at this. And thankfully, my wife eventually draws it out of me that if there's something that I need to chat about, she eventually gets it because she just innately knows. Okay, guys, follow the women here. They are so much better at this than we are. But the key is find a resource, okay? Find a place that you can chat. There's lots of groups out there, mom support groups. Find some that just give you 10 minutes a day, maybe 30 minutes a week, whatever it might be that allows you to just let go, okay? So important. And sadly, my parents don't do that. They kind of, because they're old school, think that they'll just internalize it all and they will not have to do it. Well, then it never gets done, which is why we're still doing the planning for them all these years later, okay? So please seek some support. Find some organizations that you can become a part of that allow you to just vent. Especially now, we've been cooped up in our homes for 3, 4, 5 months. I can't wait till I get out into the field again and give people hugs and shake their hand and look at them eye to eye. You know, I cannot wait. That's what I love about the national conference. Everybody is so giving and engaging. Okay? It's huge. So find those avenues to let yourself go. All right. So finally, the E in all of this is now execute and evaluate. All right. These 7 steps of figuring out what your foundation is, learning where you are in your timeline, starting your Google Drive on opening the door, or a day in the life of my sister Heather. The realization and the planning behind, all right, where are we at financially? Where do we want to be, and how are we planning to make that happen? Taking a look at the legal obligations that you have to look at, and then finding a way to just become whole again. Okay, all of these little steps then lead up to executing whatever plan you have. And this is, for me, it's the promise plan. It's a 7-step promise plan. And the promise is just an easy acronym for me to remember that helps me focus on each one of my paths on my beach here. Okay, so executing and evaluating. So now what? What do we do? Okay. And oftentimes people ask, Patrick, what do you guys do? So you're a financial advisor and you also specialize in helping families with special needs. So what really is that? Okay. But this is the easiest way to show you all of that is. We do all of the traditional financial planning, okay? Investment strategies, tax planning, distribution strategies, education, all of that stuff, insurance planning, which by far, insurance planning, knock on wood right here, the cheapest way to fund your third-party special needs trust is with some life insurance, okay? Easiest, simplest way to have that benefit down the road of some cash for your loved one, okay? So the traditional financial planning piece is so important. And, what we've learned from COVID is that time equals success with regards to planning, okay? Nice little piece from JP Morgan. The longer you choose to invest, the smaller your chances of actually losing money are, okay? So if you go back 20 years and you put 100 grand and just left it in just the stocks, and so you're talking about the S&P 500, you would have averaged 11.5% and had almost 850. Okay. Even if you were just super conservative in bonds, there was a time when bonds actually had a return, not just a coupon, but a return. You'd have 300,000. In a 50-50 portfolio, you're not taking a lot of risk, you'd still have $500,000. Okay. Stay in the game. All right. If you're having trouble finding ways to stay in the game, then you need to find better financial planners or investment strategies, because they are out there. Okay. The longer you play, the better your results will be. All right. This is just another little piece. On the bottom right, the average investor over the last 20 years is only getting 2.5% return. If you were a 60-40 investor, you're going to get almost 6%. All right. These aren't fake numbers. These are real numbers based on asset classes. Okay. So some of our folks who live in high dollar districts, California, New York, Florida, whatnot, and have invested in real estate, not just the house, but in other parts of real estate, you've done real pretty well. Okay. Gold, while it isn't always the best, but it acts as a real nice hedge when volatility goes crazy. So we know where we are historically. The average investor does do well because they let emotion get in the way. If you create a plan, we can take emotion out. There are far other parts of your plan, your promise plan, that require a whole lot more emotion. Your retirement accounts, your investment accounts, your non-qualified accounts don't need emotion. They need logic. They need math. They need guidance. Okay, so keep that in mind. So there's all of that financial planning stuff that gets combined with person-centered planning, the application and learning of all the public benefits, the managed money, the hurdles that you've got to get through, support structures. We've figured that out too. Just guys, when you can, go find a beer with somebody. I got a few guys that I can go out and have a drink with once a month, and it's just something that I can't duplicate with my wife and her friends. All right, everybody can relate to that. Find somebody you can unload with. All right, so special needs financial planning is the application of all of those tentacles. Okay, I didn't know what I was doing in the special needs planning over 20 years ago when I got started in the financial planning. But it became really easy to figure out that the high net worth clients needed a whole lot less expertise than the folks like mine who didn't get it when I was younger. Okay, so this is what we do. This is who we are. That's my partner Wendy. She and I spend so much time on all of the various aspects of the planning that we can be of benefit to you. Okay, I want you to take pictures of this stuff. Okay, that we just, and I think Andrea is actually recording this, so it's important that if you need a copy of it, get a copy of it. I'm not holding anything back because I want you guys to have some of the information that I had to go through and deal with, and then figure out how do you do this plan. Okay, how do you do it? How do the pieces fit together? And the 7-step guide of promise is designed to give you a roadmap. Just follow the roadmap. All right, it's an instruction manual. It's like putting a piece of your first crib together. You need the instruction manual. This is it. Okay, so take a snap picture of this. There's our website. There's our phone number. There's my email address. Okay, it's all there. So questions, ideas that maybe you don't want to share. I think I got a note from Andrea that there's some questions coming in. So I think what we'll do for time's sake right now is I'll leave this up, or actually I'll go back to the first one. And you guys can snap a picture of that, and then I'll take some questions from Andrea. But every one of these pieces, and real quick, you don't need to start at the very beginning. It makes sense to start at the beginning, figure out where you are, where the holes in the plan are, and then build from there. But if something hits you emotionally along the way where you're like, what, we really need to do the estate planning and get a will, because what happens if something happens to us? If there's no plan in place there, it's a long struggle. So figure out the areas that make the most amount of sense and go from there. Okay. So actually what I'll do is, I wonder if I click the back button, it'll bring me back to, there's our contact information. Okay. So I'm actually going to turn it back to Andrea, and then she can ask for questions, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick, for a very informative presentation this evening. As you did mention, a recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel for anybody who missed today's presentation or would like to watch it again. If you have questions, feel free to submit them via the question box on your screen. We do have a couple of questions coming in already. Kevin would like to know if you can give an example of a qualified disability expense that ABLE can be used for, and then he has a follow-up question once you answer that one.
Okay, so a qualified disability expense, a computer, okay, an assistive technology device. All right, here's the key with that. There's a litany of all of these things. The SSI money that comes in, the 783 with maybe a little bit of an excess in some states, is designed for eats and sheets. So food and shelter, okay? If the Social Security Administration gets access to finding out that you're using third party or trust money to pay for that, that's going to be trouble, okay? But the ABLE account has a much, much broader scope of things that you can pay for. So Kevin, that's a great question because qualified disability expenses are somewhat restrictive in the third-party special needs trust, and hence that's why we've seen the transition in the legal world to putting more information in the letter of intent or the open the door box that I referenced, in that then the creation of the ABLE account provides far more flexibility in getting money out of that account. Okay, so okay, Andrea, the backup question to that was?
Sure. He also wants to know if you max out the ABLE account at 100,000 and subsequently spend some of that money, can you refill it back to 100,000?
You can, yes. Just keep in mind, you're not really going to want to get that close, because if you've got 90 grand in there and you have a stock market, and depending upon how you invest those dollars, and any one of the providers of the ABLE accounts, okay, so they're going to be names you guys recognize: Vanguard, BlackRock, iShares, all of those various investment types. They are low-cost exchange traded funds. Okay, again, you don't need a financial planner like me to guide you through that. It's really self-explanatory, but you can go up to 100 and then spend it down. All right, but you might just want to put in the back of your mind, if you get to 90, start spending some of the money, because if you have one good market return and you don't pull the dollars out, then you end up getting on the radar of Social Security Administration, and you'll start to lose the SSI benefit. Okay, so great question, Kevin. Thank you.
We also have a question from Danielle. Her and her husband have a 13-year-old. Danielle retired early to stay home, and her husband will be retiring this year. Their son does not have SSI. Should we apply for it or apply for a CDB?
Okay, so thank you, Danielle, for the question. If I understand that correct, you have already retired, and your husband is going to retire this year, and your child is 13 years of age. And I'm sorry, I don't know if it's a boy or girl, but either way, they cannot receive the benefits, because the assets that you guys have will supersede anything that happens up until the age of 18. Okay, so if you guys have $100,000 of assets, or you've got $1 million of assets, those, according to the SSA, are eligible to be spent for the kid, for your child. All right, it isn't until you get to age 18 that you can apply for SSI. It's at that point that we start thinking about, all right, if your husband is old enough to start pulling a Social Security benefit, then there's the ability to draw the disabled adult child or the child disability benefit off of the record at that time. Okay, so the key is going to be, hey, you know what? And now that I'm wondering and I'm thinking through this, so that's a good question, because you can certainly take Social Security early at 62, and the child disability benefit is actually targeted off of full retirement age. So if your husband's full retirement age is 65, a portion of his benefit is payable to your child. So if that actual benefit supersedes what the traditional SSI benefit would be at age 18, then you might be able to get away with that. And you know what, truthfully, Danielle, that's a good question, because I have to think about that. So if we have a copy of your email address or something like that, let me check into that, and then I can email you back the answer. But my first gut says no, but I could certainly be wrong. I've been wrong plenty on some of these. So let's see what we can do. That's a good question, though.
Thanks. And Danielle, I'll make sure that, and Danielle, I'll make sure that you get Patrick's email and vice versa. Patrick, if the majority of someone's retirement assets are in IRAs, do RMD distributions from an IRA left for a child in a special needs trust have to be spent each year, or can they be placed in a taxable account available for future spending?
So this goes back to the legal piece. In the normal world, if you were going to leave an IRA to your child, and something happens to you, all of a sudden you've got an influx, or your child has an influx of 100,000, 200,000, whatever the number might be. Taxes have to be paid, and then that money becomes eligible for spend down. Okay, you're far better off creating a third-party special needs trust, putting those assets into that trust, and then making sure that the appropriate accumulation language is inside the trust to then allow for the trustee of that trust to accumulate those required minimum distributions and pay them out as necessary. Okay, it gets to be very, very technical, but that's one of those areas where you don't want to have saved all of this money in a tax-deferred IRA and then leave it to your son or daughter for them to pay all the tax on the money, okay? It just doesn't make the most amount of sense. So having those assets in an IRA, now you can have almost any investment that's inside of an IRA, okay? So it doesn't matter if it's stock, bond, ETF, you can own real estate inside of an IRA, but you're going to want the wrapper, that's a third-party special needs trust, to protect that asset from taxation and undue taxation, okay? So that's a great question. Again, it's one of those that gets a little complicated, but you don't want to just say, let's put this or cash it out into a different investment account, because anything that ends up in the child's name is going to be subject to a spend down, okay? So hence, the ABLE account at 15,000 bucks is a good place for money to go, but you can't really put IRA money in there because of all of the tax rules that go with it. But a third-party special needs trust certainly does help in that spot. So hopefully that answers your question.
I think it does. And we have another question from Peter and Faith. They would like to know if it's a good idea to invest in a 529 for college expenses for their infant, or is there a better way to save money for his possible post-secondary training needs that could also be used for other expenses outside of education?
So that's a great question. And I would go along with the idea that if there is the possibility of the disability not funding an appropriate 529 plan for college, go with the ABLE account, okay? It's far easier to transition money into the ABLE account. I often get them transposed because they're built on the same platform with the same structure. So the easiest thing to do is fund the ABLE account, because let's say at some point in the future, there's going to be a need for college. Well, you can certainly use those funds out of the ABLE account for education purposes as well, okay? You don't need to kind of think, is it an either or situation, all right? Where we see some overlap from time to time is a family has two children, one child got a disability, one does not, all right? So the child with a disability, they start funding an ABLE account, all right? The child without the disability, they start funding a 529. Kids grow up, let's say the son or daughter without the disability has 20,000 bucks inside the 529, and they get a scholarship to school. Everything's fully paid for. Can you move the money from the 529 into the ABLE account? You get that question a lot. And the answer is yes, but there's a little bit of maneuvering that needs to go along with that, okay? So you can transition assets if need be, all right? So hopefully that gives you a little bit of guidance, but I would go the ABLE direction first and then set it from there, okay? That's what I would do. Go ahead, Andrea.
Sure. It looks like we have two questions from Floor. Do you have any recommendations in the San Diego area for a special needs trust? And is there a specific website for ABLE accounts?
Yes, there is we'll answer that last one first. There is a specific, I think it's ABLE Now, ABLENOW.com or something along those lines. There's in San Diego, that's a better question for offline. Could you read that? Are you looking for a San Diego trust attorney, or did I hear that incorrectly? Can you reread that? The question was,
sure, who do you recommend in the San Diego area for special needs trusts? And then she just clarified, yes, an attorney.
Okay, okay. That will be an off the line conversation that we can have. There are some individuals that I know who have a few different attorneys that they're using in the San Diego area, and I'll be happy to, facilitate those names in an introduction for you for that. Sure.
Thank you, Patrick. And I found that ABLE account website for everybody. It's in the chat box on your screen if you'd like to save it for later. It looks like we don't have any other questions. So with that, thank you everybody for coming tonight, and thank you, Patrick, for a very informative presentation. If anybody has any additional questions for Patrick, you can go ahead and email him directly. His email is up on the screen, or you can submit them to info@pwsausa.org, and I will forward your email along. You can also keep the conversation going by joining one of our many Facebook support groups. Just send us an email and we will add you to one of the groups. A recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel for anybody who missed today's presentation or would like to watch it again. With that, thank you again, Patrick, for your presentation. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe and have a good evening.
Thank you, guys. I'll let go, Andrea. Please stay safe out there. And God bless.